Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the KGC show. Today, I am joined by one of my favorite podcasters of all. You can see him twice a week, Monday and Wednesday. Monday, he does some great interviews, and on Wednesday, he is joined by a lovely co-host, Bubbly, too. We'll talk about her later on the show. But please give it up for the podcaster of all, my buddy and yours, Mr. Jay Franze. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. I don't know if I can live up to it, but I'm doing good. Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on the show. How you been since the last time we talked?
I'm doing very good, sir. Very good. Things have been going very well. Very excited. Got some new projects going on. So it's definitely been a busy few months, but a very good few months.
That's what we like to hear. We'll get into all of the new stuff a little bit later on in the show.
Sure.
But for the people who don't know who you are, can you talk to us a little bit about who Jay Franze is and the extremely talented show that you have that I suggest people watch?
Well, thank you for that. Myself, I am a 35 plus year veteran of the music industry. So I'm old, but I've been working in the industry for 35 plus years now. I think I'm going on 36. And I started as a recording engineer in Boston, where I was born and raised. And then I moved to New York, worked there for about 10 years, and then found my way into Nashville, where I spent the majority of my career. I think it was about 30 or 20 years at that point. And now that that part of my career is over, I still work in the industry. But as you mentioned, now I do it from a hosting standpoint. I host a talk show where I now get to talk to the industry professionals, whether that be artists, record labels, tour managers, and so on. So I get to talk to people within the industry, and then we also deliver the news of the industry. So it's a fun change to be behind the microphone and in front of the camera versus being the person that was in the recording studio recording everybody else. Now I actually am the person being recorded.
Yeah. What have been some of your favorite memories from doing the Jay Franze show?
Oh, wow. From doing the show. Well, it's been a long journey. So the song or the show now has been as it is for the past 3 years. And before that, there was still a talk show, but it was not quite as focused for 3 years before that. So the way it is now, the most exciting stuff to me is getting to talk to all of the artists that I used to work with. Because when you're in the studio, you don't really have too much time to sit there and chat. You're too busy trying to get everything done. You're too busy trying to get the signals through the console and into the recorder, and you're too busy trying to make sure nothing gets messed up. So it's a very stressful environment where now it's laid back. We get to sit back and tell stories. So it reminds me of the times when we'd be on a tour bus and we'd be just chit chatting. So those are when all the good stories come out, right? Is when you're just hanging around on a tour bus and maybe taking in a beer or something and you're loose and you're relaxed and you're telling war stories. So this gives people a platform to come on and tell their war stories. So we tell their war stories, we get their background, and we find out how they got to where they are and what they do to make themselves different than everybody else. And then the, like I said, the exciting parts, it's meeting the new people, hearing the new stories, getting to talk with up and coming artists that, you would have never met because they're working with different people at this stage of their career. So you get to meet people and you get to work with work. You get to talk with people that you wouldn't normally get to talk to.
Yeah. What are some things that you've learned from doing this show?
The biggest thing I've learned is patience, and it's patience all around. It's no different than being in a recording studio or anywhere else. It's a creative environment, and You have to understand that creativity doesn't happen. It just doesn't blossom and blow up overnight. So just like an artist doesn't become successful overnight, your show doesn't become successful overnight. The the show and the popularity and growing the audience and trying to figure out exactly what you're going to do and how your show is going to be formatted, all that takes time. And you have to be patient and you have to have the drive and desire and the foresight to know, okay, I'm going to get to this point, but I have to work myself through these hurdles and these obstacles to get there. So it's that drive and passion that's going to allow you to get there, but you have to give it that time. So you have to be patient. You have to be patient to hone the craft. The gear and the equipment that you're using takes time to learn how to use it all. Even though I worked in the audio industry for 30 plus years, learning new equipment takes time. Learning how to, work with different pieces like the hosting company or the distribution system. You have to learn all of those things. So that takes time. Making connections with radio stations to potentially purchase your show. They have special requirements of things like that. So you have to be prepared to have your show ready to meet their specifications. Whether or not you want to, bring on a co-host like I've done. I had the show for 2 years before I brought on a co-host. And I brought on the co-host because I wanted to address the news. I didn't want to just talk to people in the industry and just hear stories. I also wanted to provide information for fans. The fans, what is going on, what's being released, what tours are going on, what's going on in the industry that you might want to know about. And so having the patience to figure all of that stuff out is really what I've learned the most.
What has your crew meant to you? Can you talk to us a little bit about what that is and what does that feel like for you to have a group of people that love your show so much that you can count on them every week to be there?
Well, I mean, nothing tops that, right? Having people that want to listen to your show and having people that want to be involved, nothing at all tops that feeling. And nothing at all tops having a team of people that are wanting to be there for you and for your show. I mean, they are a very supportive group. We call them our crew members. At first we had no idea what we were going to call the people who followed us, if anybody followed us at all. We never even thought about it. And then as it started to happen and we started to get more and more people sending us messages or making comments in the show or any sort of participation whatsoever, we just started, randomly calling people stuff. We had one person that chimed in every week. We called him an associate producer. Hey, he's helping us produce the show. He's out in the field. And we were just making fun of the stuff like, hey, he's in the field and he's doing this and he's doing XYZ. And we're trying to include them by doing things like that. But when it came time to think of more than one or two people being involved, because when you first start, there's only one or two people that are involved. So once we had more than one or two people, we were just sitting around one day and I mentioned the crew members. And Tiffany said, "What's that?" I said, "The crew members." And you go to a concert, you see people wearing the t-shirts, and on the back of the t-shirt, it says crew member. So in the music industry, when you're doing live performances, the people who support you and help put the show together are called crew members.
Mhm.
So we thought that was the best name we could think of for the group of people that we consider to be our collaborators. They give us the information that they want to hear about, and we talk to them throughout the show. We read their comments throughout the show. We take their suggestions, for their question of the day or any other thing. And so we involve them as much as possible. We call them our crew members, and we, make merch, t-shirts or hoodies, and on the back it says crew member. So we just try to include people. But to answer your question one more time, how does it make me feel? It makes me feel awesome.
As you are. And so is your co host, Miss Tiffany Mason. Can you
She's all right.
spread spreading
She's
the
awesome.
love? She is. She's the best. She has a wonderful podcast as well. And we'll talk about that later on in the show. but can you talk to us a little bit about how she came to with the podcast?
Sure. Again, I've never met Tiffany. Matter of fact, we met for the first time in person just a couple months ago at CMA Fest. So I met Tiffany because she reached out and asked me to come on her show. She has a show called Memories with a Beat where people come on and talk to them about a song that stirs up memories. You've had an opportunity to be on her show, so you understand. But you go on her show, you pick a song from the past that every time you hear it, you instantly think of a certain memory and you talk about that memory. For me, I picked a song called Drinker's Hour by a band called Von Ray. Von Ray was a group of people that I became friends with when I lived in Orlando. They were a young band just starting out, and I was in Orlando for 6 years. And from the moment I started living there and I met them, they were playing in a bar when literally I was the only person in that bar, me and my girlfriend at the time. And I would hang out at the merch table with his mother, who was manning the merch table. And then eventually you'd have three, four people in the bar with me. And then eventually it was packed. And then eventually they have to go to a different bar because they need more room. And before I left, they were headlining the House of Blues, which was a big venue where all the national acts played. And they had a line all the way around the corner. So, I mean, they became huge and then they blew up, got a record deal, and went on the road with Creed and Nickelback. And, they became a very large band at that time. So, those are the memories it sparked with me. So, hearing that song and knowing how that song came about for that band, and then having Tiffany talk to me about it, and she talks to people like you and I that when we talk, we're talking about our experience when we're listening to somebody else's song. But I have had the opportunity. Von Ray was the very first guest of my show, so I know them very well, and I'm good friends with them. So when we talked about that song, I said, "Well, why don't you come on my show, and I'll bring one of the members of Von Ray on, and we'll close the loop to our conversation." That's something she doesn't normally get to do. She doesn't normally get to talk with the actual artist. So she said yes, and she came on the show, and we all had a blast. It was just fun talking. It didn't seem like work, didn't seem like effort. We just talked about our love for music. It wasn't about how we did these fancy things. It wasn't about how we created these albums. It was just about three people, three fans of music, sitting around talking about this person's song. So it was great. It was a good time. And then a few months later, and when I was thinking about having a co-host, she was the first person I reached out to. I just said, "Hey, would you like to come on the show and, try this out?" And she said yes, but first she says, "Why me?" And I said, "Because we have fun together." So she did, and she came on and we had fun, and it's been fun ever since. And like I said, we first got to meet each other for the first time at CMA Fest this year. It was a blast.
Did you ever think growing up and having the career that you have had that being able to have a podcast over the internet would bring together a co-host for you?
No, absolutely not. When I first started, like I said, I'm old. I was in a garage. The only way we can get our information out about the band I was in at the time, we made black and white copies on a Xerox machine in my father's office. And we went around and hung them on every telephone pole through every college we could find. You can imagine in Boston, there's several colleges. So we didn't just go on the streets, we went to the colleges and hung the signs up wherever we could to get people to come see us play. There was no internet. I mean, there was nothing like that. There was no cell phones. So I mean, we just literally did the legwork, and it worked for the time. And honestly, if there was an internet and stuff, we wouldn't have made it anywhere because we weren't any good. We were we were just high school and college kids just playing music for fun. I didn't realize how serious the industry was until later in life.
Yeah. Man, you just sparked up a immediate question in my mind when you were talking. When you were a kid growing up, did you ever think that you would have the amazing career that you've had and are having with your show and with your books and everything?
No, not in a million years. All I wanted to do at the time was write songs for girls to try to win them over. There was no thinking that this was going to be a career or anything, but I found out I went to college for architectural engineering. So my first 2 years of college was for architecture. And I did it because my dad was a civil engineer, and I just figured that's what you do. You grow up, you be like your dad, you go become an engineer. But I chose architecture because I like to draw. And I realized it was more than drawing. It was, matter of fact, drawing was probably the smallest piece of it. And I didn't like it. I remember sitting in the back of the classroom, sitting on the windowsill in Boston, staring out the window, thinking about my show that weekend while they're in the classroom talking about how to make bricks. And I had no desire in this world to know how to make a brick. I just didn't, it didn't, register to me at all. I did not care. I could not care less. It just wasn't for me. So I switched majors, and my year 3 and 4 was for audio engineering instead of architectural engineering. And audio engineering, as you know, is the craft of recording and mixing music, whether it be in the studio or live. And that's what I fell in love with. And man, once I found that path, that's what I wanted to do. I knew I wasn't talented enough to be a musician. I knew I didn't have that in me, even though in my mind, I understand the theory and the chord charts and the number system in Nashville, and I know how to write it all. I just can't get my hands to do it. My hands, like when I thinking about a drummer having to do four different things on all their limbs, not a chance. Not a chance. I can't get my two hands to play something different on a piano. If I start playing something on one, the other has to do the same thing. It's just, they go together. So I knew I wasn't going to be a musician, but I wanted to work in the industry, and I would have done anything. I used to say I'd go play tambourine for Journey if they'd let me. I just wanted to be part of it. So my part ended up being in the recording studio, recording people. For some reason, that was my connection. That's what I was good at. That's what I seemed to stand out and was able to do, probably a hair better than everybody else. And then it was my drive and desire that put me ahead of everybody else. It wasn't just talent, because honestly, you don't have to have talent. You have to have drive and desire. That goes much further than talent does. Because you could be the best guitar player in the world, but if you don't want to be playing guitar, it's not going to make a difference. Or if you don't want to practice to get to the next level, it's not going to make a difference. If Eddie Van Halen went and sold carpet, you would never know who Eddie Van Halen was. But he had that drive and desire to go beyond the talent and keep building and making things better and better and better. And I think that's what it takes for anybody to succeed in any industry, is just drive and passion and the desire to keep learning, learn every day.
And that drive and passion has got you to interview one of the founding members of the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. Can you talk to us? See what I did there?
Yes, I can. John McEwen.
That's
John
right.
McEwen, the founding member singer, is a great guy. And he came on the show. It was very cool. It wasn't just cool to talk to somebody who wrote great songs or somebody who participated in a extremely well-known band or any of that type of stuff. It was cool because he's been in it for a long time. And when you're in something for a long time, there's a deeper level of understanding. You can talk to a new artist that just got off the road for the first time, and they're going to be able to tell you what it was like being on the road, but they can't tell you what it was like being on the road for 35 years or 40 years or 50 in some of these cases. So those people who have been part of that and can tell you what the industry was like in the 70s, and then how it changed in the 80s, and then how it changed again in the 90s, and they can go through decade by decade and tell you all the differences. Those are the people that you don't want to let go. You want to ask them every question you can think of, because you don't want to say it. They're up there in age. You want to get all the information out of them while you can, but you're getting information from legends, and you want to hear their stories.
And I mean, you know it as well as I do. When they start talking, you shut up, man.
Absolutely.
But what has been that interview that you've kind of sat there and said, okay, this is really cool that we've gotten to actually put this into production and film it.
There's been a few that stand out to me, and they stand out for different reasons. They're not all, just always music in production and songwriting and all these things that you would think. Sometimes it's just raw talent or a personality that draws you to people. I had Josie Saul on the show, and she was 12 years old at the time, but she looks and sounds like a full blown adult when she sings and stuff. And she writes songs that are killer. And she's had a chance to perform with Jelly Roll and all these other people. I mean, she is super talented at 12 years old. Now, granted, she's 13 now, so she, no longer counts. But no, she's amazing. So, talking to somebody who's my daughter's age and just understanding how much talent she has and what she's doing with it at such a young age and that drive and that desire and that passion, that was a great conversation. Or Presley Tennant, a young girl who was on The Voice at the age of 16, and now she's probably in her early 20s and she's just a vocal powerhouse. But then there's people like Gina Grad. Gina Grad was the news anchor, the news personality for Adam Carolla for years. Now she's on a show called The Woody Show, and it's amazing radio. But her personality is amazing. That was one of my favorite interviews ever because she has this amazing personality. And hearing her talk and how excited she gets, and she is able to do voices. She did a voice of Robin Quivers on the show, and it just sounded identical to Robin Quivers. I mean, so she was an amazing one. And then there's the superstars. You got John McEwen from the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, but you got William Lee Golden from the Oak Ridge Boys. You got Mike Skill from the Romantics. So those are some really cool people. And I say that, yes, there's the newer artists that come on the show that are also absolutely amazing, but those are people that I grew up listening to. So it's not just that they're out there making records now or touring now. These are people that I listened to growing up, or even better yet, these are people that I'd covered their songs in the first few bands that I was in. Thinking to myself, if you could ever be like these guys. And now I'm talking to these guys, and that's amazing. So yeah, those are the highlights for that.
Yeah. So before we go too deep into the rest of the show, I want to list off three guests that you've had that the episodes that have absolutely floored me, that they were incredible.
Okay.
Billy Joe Jones. Talk to us a little bit about that and the new show she's on the road.
Yes. Billy Joe Jones, great singer out of Texas. Country singer, more of a traditional style sound to her, with a little bit of that new world country blended in with it. She has been lucky enough to be on all of the major singing shows, American Idol, The Voice, but now she's currently out on the road. That's that new, she's out opening up for Keith Urban. So it's the show's not out yet. I think it comes out this month. I'm very excited to see it. I see her posting and promoting it like crazy, so I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see how far she made it because she's been on the show three times. First time we talked to her just about her, just had a great conversation about her, and we got to know her as an artist. And then the second time we knew she was going to be going on the TV show The Road, but we weren't allowed to talk about it. So when she came on the show, we were trying to trick her into saying things, trick her into telling us about it. And it became just fun. We weren't truly trying to get her to spill something she was not supposed to, but we were joking about it and laughing about it. And it was just a good time leading up to the anticipation. Then the third time, it was announced, and we knew she was going on the show, and we knew everything was done. And we were trying to get her to spill the beans. Oh, so you won the show. What was it like to win the show? And she wouldn't, she's not able to talk about any of that stuff. So it's just funny watching her sit there and try to tell us, I can't tell you that. I can't, no, we don't know who won the show. And no, we don't know this or so,
Mhm.
but it was just fun. It gives us something, like I said, it's not always about the technical or the professionalism. You want to be professional, but you want to have fun while being professional. And she was fun to talk to.
Let's give a shout out to the great Stella Soleil, and you debuted her new music video for Hello. So, can you talk to us about that?
Yes, absolutely. That was a Jeff Panzer recommendation. She came on. She was as nice as can be. What I like most about her is well, although we primarily talk about country music, we do talk about other genres as well. But she came on and she is not a country artist. She has a background in the world of rock, which is my background as well. And she now sings more pop style songs. So to come on and see how a pop artist is approaching things these days, especially one that had a rock background, that was very cool. And they talked about the video and how she came up with how they made the video and how she met Jeff and started working together and how they filmed it from being outdoors or on a green screen or doing all these things. It was just fun to talk to her. And it was fun to hear about her past. I couldn't let it go knowing that she worked in rock music and, her early record deals and stuff was in rock. That's what I wanted to know about. So it's like anything else. I'm the fan. I'm just the fan with the microphone that's allowed to ask the questions.
Yeah,
So I'm going to ask what I want to know. I don't know what you want to know until the show's over. Then you chime in or any of the crew members chime in and they say, "Oh, that was awesome. She was awesome." And then I want to know this or I want to know that. But when I'm on the show, I think about what would the crew members like to know about, but I also want to know what I want to know about. I'm as big of a fan as anybody else. So I just assume if she was in a band with these rock stars earlier in her career, I want to know. Tell me, how does that happen? She's a tiny little blonde, and I mean, she looks like she's a Barbie doll, and she's playing with the members of Slipknot. How does that happen? So if I'm asking that question, I'm sure somebody else wants to know that as well. And she's good friends with them still to this day, so good for her.
that was a great interview you did. Both interviews you've done with both those individuals. Man, it those are some of my great. They're some of the greatest, Jay Franze, among some of your greatest. But I'm adding on one more out of the three I mentioned.
All right.
What was it like working with the great Stephanie Rabis?
Oh, that was a good one. That was good because her father got involved, which I thought was awesome. Her father started talking to me beforehand, online. He even called me on my phone and we talked for a little while. I wanted to know, okay, what kind of dirt do you have? What can we talk about? And so he was very nice, and they were very appreciative of the fact that I was going to have her on the show. And I was thankful that she was willing to come on the show. We talked about her music. I listened to her music probably for a week straight, nothing else, just to because I wasn't familiar with her music. So I wanted to be familiar with it. So I just had it on loop for probably a week straight. And for those who know me, I spend a lot of time in the car. I'm probably in the car at least 5 hours a day. So for me to have something on loop, that's 5 hours a day on loop. I'm listening to her music, and I was picking out every nook and cranny of that music and trying to get a good understanding of it all. And I felt like I did. And then when we got to talking about it, she just kept elaborating, kept making me want to go even deeper and ask these more questions. But if you've ever listened to her music, some of it is deeply personal. And the fact that she was willing to talk about those moments with me and allow me to ask those questions, that made the show spot on for me because I have young daughters. I have three daughters. And to know that a woman like her had to go through the challenges that she's been through and she survived them and she's, doing everything she is now, that to me is the role models I want my daughters to look up to. So she deserves to be at the pinnacle of role models. I get it. Taylor Swift is awesome. I get it. These other artists out there are great. But if we're really going to choose a role model to look up to, I think that's the one to do it to.
We love you, Stephanie. And we can't forget about your fellow Ohio neighbor, Miss Kate Staton.
Oh, that's
Uh,
true too.
Miss Kate Staton was an incredible episode, and you talk about a singer. I'm floored with everything I hear from her. She's
Yep,
incredible.
she is. And she's just an amazing person to talk to. She was as sweet as can be. So, I mean, it was just what I remember most about it is just an easy, fun conversation. Sometimes, you know, as well as I do, you get people who come on the show because they have an agenda. They need to sell something or promote something, and they're there for a purpose. And no matter what you talk about, they're trying to pump that purpose. And then you get some people who you might not click with as well as others, and the conversation might be informative, but it's not fireworks. And then you get the people who come on where it's a connection and it's easy. And talking to her was easy. It was just fun. We just had a conversation, talked about our music, talked about our life, and just, you know, had a very good time. I've been following her ever since, and I'm waiting for the opportunity for her to perform somewhere around me that I can get to easily.
Yeah, man. We love Kate. We love all three of those powerhouse. And you can go check all of those great interviews out on the Jay Franze Show over on YouTube. But now that we have talked about your show for long enough,
Oh, no, 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 no. You're not going to get off that easy.
well,
You told me you liked those four songs or those four episodes.
yeah,
What was it that you liked about them? What made those connect with you?
you know, honestly, it's just knowing all four of those wonderfully talented ladies as well as I do, and just knowing how the music made them. So many times that they make the music, and that's what we hear is what they make. But and oftentimes I have found that it's really a two-way street. The artist has to connect with what they're singing about, so getting to hear them go deeper into that, you know, just and I also love how you talk and ask your questions about how your drive to spread that conversation to where you're not just pinpointing things, where you're taking them deeper as well. So it's really a team effort.
Very cool.
But those were great episodes, and you can catch much more of Jay's incredible episodes alongside his co-host Tiffany over at jfranzy.com and the Jay Franze Show on YouTube. Now, I heard through the grapevine that you want to record, not recorded, but worked on a live track for Hank Jr. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? And what was that like for you?
Absolutely. This was an amazing opportunity. When I say amazing, it was amazing all around. This was something that happened maybe 12, 15 years ago, maybe. And there was this story that there was this engineer who had a barn in Pennsylvania, and in that barn he had boxes and boxes and boxes of reel-to-reel tapes that he recorded at this live venue that he used to work at. Now, people talked about it all the time, but nobody knew of it. Nobody knew where he was. Nobody knew any of the stuff. But this one producer out of Los Angeles, his name was Richard Pittman. Richard would never give up on it. And every time he would drive through Pennsylvania, he'd stop and he'd ask people and ask people and ask people. And one day, he found somebody who knew about it. And this was like years later, he found somebody who knew about it. And after making that connection and getting in touch with those people, He talked to him about it. They couldn't work anything out, so he moved on. And then years later, he kept checking in, and finally they said yes, and they sold him the tapes. Now, there was enough boxes that it filled up two pickup trucks, and these boxes were nothing but live recordings of, Opry artists that were traveling through Pennsylvania. He just recorded them on a reel-to-reel machine at the front of house station where he was mixing the music. So the tapes were, if you can imagine, sitting in a barn in Pennsylvania, going through the heat of the summer every year, then the cold of the winter, and then the heat of the summer and the cold of the winter for years. Because in that those boxes, I didn't only find Hank Williams Jr., found Dolly Parton, Johnny Cash, you know, Jerry Lee Lewis. I mean, there were so many of these recordings. And it was my job to take those, restore the tape, redo them, master them, and then get them ready for distribution. And then Richard was in negotiations with the Hall of Fame to put those recordings, the original recordings, the reel to reel tapes, in the Hall of Fame. And it got so close that I almost ended up having to be part of the exhibit. They were talking about using me to be the engineer. If you ever walk through the Country Music Hall of Fame, there's a glass wall and you can see inside of these rooms. And they wanted me to sit in one of those rooms and master all of those tapes in front of people that were walking by. So it got close to where that almost actually happened. But we never got that far. I mixed them in my own studio or mastered them in my own studio. But that's how I had the opportunity to work on the live Hank Williams recording, Hank Williams Jr.
And what was that like for you getting that opportunity in in your career?
Well, that's a good question because Richard Pittman, he was an actor. He probably still is. I haven't talked to him in a while. But he was an actor. He's a character actor. He's on the TV show Spin City. He was on Friends. He was on The West Wing, all of these shows that you would know. But he wasn't one of the main characters. He was always a character actor. He did voiceover. He worked on all the sci-fi stuff. So he was pretty successful. And I worked with him on several music projects that he did because not only was he identifying artists he liked and produced them, but he was also writing songs and producing stuff for himself. And he would hire me to work on the engineering for him. The reason he hired me was, again, like we talk about that drive, the passion, the desire, but also the ability to be honest, truthful, and not try to rip people off or scam the system. He came in and he hired me to do a project that he could have easily done himself. And he just didn't know that he could do it himself. So I showed him, I said, look, I don't mind doing this for you. That's what I'm here for. I will gladly do it. However, I could teach you in less than an hour and you could do the rest of it yourself and it would save you thousands of dollars. And he said, huh, why would you do that? I said, because it's the right thing to do. I don't need I mean, if you don't want to do it out of, you're busy, or even if you're lazy, I get it. I'll do it. However, if you're just not doing it because you don't know how, I can teach you. And I did. And he did it. And I saved him thousands of dollars. And he hired me on every project he did from that point forward.
And because of that, I'm not sure it's because of that. I'm trying to think of a nice segue for this next for the books, man. But man, out of not only are you a great podcaster, a host, musical
Oh,
engineer, live engineer, whatever, all your titles, but you're also an author
I
of
am. But hold on.
six.
Before we do that, you just said I'm a great podcaster, and I appreciate you for saying that. I'll take the compliment. I have to learn how to take compliments, so I'll take it. However, you're the one that is up for a podcast award. So why don't you tell us about that?
Well, man, it's a great honor, you know. Also, It honestly all started with a phone call from Jeff Panzer, and that phone call was as simple as this. What is spoke? He's told me, he said, "What's Spokane using you to use their name in your show?" And I said, "Nothing." And he said, his exact words, "You think you ought to make a name for yourself instead of your city." And I said, "Wow, there's a reason why you're Jeff Panzer." And I'm me, man.
And
And
Jeff's got to call me. That's all I got to say. Jeff, come on now. Start calling me.
but Jeff, he's a somebody internally grateful for. But when Jeff said that, he said, "What are your initials?" And I said, "KGC." And he goes, "Why don't you use that?" He goes, "What about the KGC podcast?" And eventually we'll drop podcast. And I remember pacing up and down the sidewalk of my mother's front yard. And I said, "What about the KGC show?" And he said, "I like it." And ever since then, it's 5 years of drive, and and that's really what you have to have for a show like this is drive, and you have to be a people person. uh
Yeah, you have to love what you do for sure.
yeah, but all that to say, I'm thankful for every guest, including you. And honestly, it doesn't seem real, but honestly it's a big honor.
Well, I'm just happy to be part of your show, sir.
Well, thank you for being a good
I
friend.
didn't mean to interrupt your flow. I'm sorry.
Thank you for coming on the show and being a good friend of the show for so many years. And and your support means the world. So I can't do this show without great folks and friends like you. So as much as this is my award, this is our award because everybody who has helped make this show is here for a reason. So,
Well, you have my vote, sir. I'm sorry. What was the question you were going to ask me originally? So I
man, you're a published author of 6 books. Can you talk to us a little bit about this latest release first?
absolutely. This latest release makes number 7. Can you imagine that? We're up to 7 now, and there's 2 more in the works. So it's been exciting. You know why I say it's exciting? I honestly have never read a book. And I've listened to books, don't get me wrong. I listen to books on tape or um, audio files and that type of stuff. But I've never read one. I have a hard time reading. Like I have a mild form of dyslexia, I'm sure, and I have to really concentrate on reading to get the words correctly and then concentrate on it again to understand it. And it just makes it tough for me. So when I can sit down and listen to a book on tape, it clicks instantly. And I can even listen to it on, 1.5 or 2x and still get the information, especially being from Boston. Everybody talks so fast. So I get that information and it works for me. But when I write a book, it's different because I'm typing it and I don't have to read it and I can just type. And so that's the crazy part. But the book itself, the latest book, is it's a personal development, a personal branding type book. It shows people how to succeed, but it specifically this book is how to specifically stand out in the music business in Nashville. It could apply to an accountant in New Brunswick. It doesn't matter. But the stories and the references are from my personal life in my time in Nashville.
Yeah. And you can find those at jfranze.com. But let's talk to us about the evolution of your books, and what talk to us about that first book, and what is that common thread that keeps an author writing? What's that encouraging to keep going?
Well, let me start at the end and tie it all in for you. I have found success not just based on drive, passion, which is what I truly fall back on. I have more drive and passion to stick to something much longer than anybody else would, much longer than the truly talented people would. When the truly talented people give up, I'm still there. And then that's when my work really begins. So it's not that I'm more talented than anybody else. It's just that I stick around longer than anybody else. But part of that is knowing accidentally, knowing what to do to stand out and make yourself look better or look more desirable or look like you've got more going on than the person next to you. So when it came time for me, when I was doing my own albums early in my career, everybody was recording cassette demos and slapping stickers on them. And, this is my band and this is my song. I wanted to look like the major label records that were out. So I went to a production house and asked them to manufacture CDs before people were manufacturing CDs independently. And I went and hired a graphic artist to do the graphics and a photographer to do the photos. And my very first CD that I released looked like a major label project before any other independent artist was putting out CDs. They were all doing cassette demos. And I was working for the production house that was making the cassette demos. So to have a CD, every single person I ever showed that CD to, every artist I ever showed it to, the very next thing they say is, "Oh my God, how do I get that?" So everybody thought it looked awesome. Now, the music could be horrible. It doesn't make a difference. Nobody was listening to it. It didn't matter. It's what it looked like. So then I took that same principle and applied it to my logo. Like even now for the show, I worked on the logo and created the logo that was just right for the show. I created the website. At the time, for me as an engineer, I created the website back in 1987, I think it was, before websites were really a thing. And to have a website before anybody else did made you different. And to have that throughout my career made me different. And all of these little things that I wasn't thinking directly of at the time was building a personal brand. So now I was working at the college teaching audio engineering at the college in Nashville. And I had a book of notes, a 3-ring binder of notes that I took throughout the years to learn how to use Pro Tools, the industry standard recording software. And every student asked me to borrow those notes. And one student, when he gave them back to me, said, "Dude, this could be a book." And I said, "Huh, I never thought of it like that." But okay. So I spent a month, 30 days, learning how to turn it into a book, how to lay it out, how to do all that stuff, how to put it together, who to send it to, who's going to make it, how are they going to do it. And then I'd look for a publisher, and nobody would publish it. Nobody. So I said, okay. So then I said, oh, how am I going to do this? And I figured out how to do it myself. So I put the book together. As soon as the book was done, 30 days from start to finish, had book in hand, took it to school, handed it to the student who said this could be a book. Then another student wanted it, another one wanted it. So I was selling them out of my trunk. The school wouldn't even carry it in their library. They wouldn't even, the school itself, they would use it to say their teacher at their school wrote the book on Pro Tools, but they wouldn't allow me to sell it or put it in their library. I think they may have cracked and let me put it in the library, but they wouldn't let me sell it out of their bookstore. So nobody was willing to do that. But all of a sudden, a school in Canada, of all places, asked me if they could use it as a textbook. And I said, sure. And they bought a ton of them. And then 3 months later, when they had a new group of students, they bought a ton more. And 3 months later, a ton more. And then another school wanted it. And then I remember I walked into this producer's studio. We were working, I think, a recording for the band Chicago. And I walked into the studio, and there was my book on his bookshelf. Now, this was one of the biggest producers in the world, one of the top songwriters in the world. And there's my book on his bookshelf. So I was like, huh, okay. This is starting to make sense. This book is giving me credibility. And the students started treating me differently because now all of a sudden I wasn't just somebody who was teaching. I was the guy who wrote the book. And again, the book could be horrible. It doesn't matter. I was the guy who wrote the book. So it was all about image and the look of it and everything. And then once it started selling and doing well, then the publishers came and wanted to publish it. So it's just like an independent artist with their music. Nobody wants to give them the record deal until they're successful. But once you're successful, you don't need the record label anymore. The record label's a bank, the publisher's a bank. All they're doing is funding the project that you're doing. I did it myself. So I did that book. And then later on down the road, I did a second one to follow up because my craft as an engineer was always mixing. That was my strongest point. It's what I loved doing was mixing records. So my second book was the first one was called Pro Tools A to Z. So play on the little keyboard feature in Pro Tools that said A dot 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 Z. And I just thought it was from beginning to end. I thought it was funny. So Pro Tools A to Z. My next book was called Mixing A to Z, which was a companion book that taught you, the first one taught you how to make the software work. The second one said how I use the software to actually mix songs. And then as time went on, I started changing my career path. And I started now working in the business side of music instead of the production side. And I started doing the transportation and security for the artists that I used to record in the studio. So now I'm taking them to award shows and I'm getting their tour buses ready or putting them on the road for tours and providing security. I remember doing me personally, I was personally at the night doing security for Iron Maiden. And I mean, it was awesome. I just love doing those type of things. And so I started working in the business side of it. So my next two books were on business leadership, how to do that. That's what my degree is in. I got a master's degree from the University in Queensland in business leadership. So because I don't want to just go work for these people and say I can run your transportation or do your security. I want them to believe it. I want to have the background to do it. So I did go to school for it. And then after that, I wrote these books here. It's this one that's out and the two that are following about personal branding and how you as an individual can put a brand together and then market that brand so you can be successful in whatever industry you're in. Just the different things it takes, and they're all backed with personal stories, the good ones and the bad ones. They're every lesson or story or moment in that book is backed up with a story.
And I encourage people to go get all those books at jfranze.com under books. They're on his website. One of the main tabs on there just says book next to contact. How do I know? Because I live on jfranze.com. Literally refresh it every hour. Okay. But
Oh, you had me for a minute, buddy. My wife doesn't even look at my website.
no, I do though. I do love your website. And did you graphic design all that?
Yes, sir. I mean,
How long did
there's only two people involved in my show from beginning to end, and that's myself and Tiffany. I mean,
how did
we do everything.
how did you design your website and all that stuff?
Well, that started, there's a good friend of mine. His name is Mark Bottolato. I've known him since college, since 1988. We played in a band together, a band called Burning Heart. So we played in a band called Burning Heart. It was a hard rock band. And we both worked at a music store selling records. And, excuse me. So we both worked in this music store selling records. And we got to be good friends. And he went to school for computer programming. So when the internet first started, like before people were doing it, was when computers where you can literally, I had an Atari computer at the time, and all I could do was type my name in it and make it go across the screen. I thought that was the greatest thing ever. And he told me, he goes, you could put a website together for your music. I was like, what are you talking about? What's a website? And we just started talking about it. And I was like, that's awesome. He's like, yeah. I said, I don't know how to do that. He goes, but I do. So I was like, oh, great. So he showed me. He didn't do it. He showed me how to do it. So I just kept doing it. And each time I wanted to make an update, I just started doing it myself and doing it myself. And he taught me how to look at the actual programming code so I can copy it. You know, if I see something on somebody else's site, I can go and say, "Oh, I like that. How did they do it?" And I can look at it and copy what I need and apply it to mine and tweak it to be what I need it to do, and then I can make it happen. Or like say even the colors. I have a very specific color palette that I use for the show. I didn't know what those colors were. I didn't know what you call them. I just go and find out what those are in the code, and I copy them and put them in my website. And next thing you know, the code is what it is. The colors come up right. So it just took years and years and years of practice, and I still do it today for people. I just did Bob Bullock's website. If you go to bobbullock.net, one of the world's biggest producers, he's somebody that I studied under for years. All of the big records that I ever worked on were under Bob Bullock. So I mean, Travis Tritt, Tracy Byrd, all the big country albums of the day. He did a lot. He before me. He did the last 11 George Strait records. He did the last three Shania Twain records. I mean, this man is a king when it comes to producing and engineering. He engineered those records. I don't know if he produced any of those. I know Mutt Lange produced Shania Twain's, but we're still friends to this day. And I just finished his website for him just recently. So
That,
still do websites whenever necessary.
that'd be a good podcast. That'd be a cool podcast.
He's awesome. He really is. He's been on the show at least once or twice. So if you want to know more about Bob Bullock, by all means, go to my site and check out the Bob Bullock episode.
Go to jayfranze.com. So easy for me to say. Uh, you know, you have had an incredible career, and we've talked about a little bit about all of it throughout this show today. But out of everything that you've accomplished and been on ABC, all that stuff, and you had a sketch on Saturday Night Live. Is that true?
Yeah, I had a song of mine put into a sketch on Saturday Night Live. This was years ago, and it was one of the best moments to happen to me as a songwriter. For one, everybody knows what Saturday Night Live is, so you don't have to explain that to anybody. And two, it was a skit about the Beatles. You don't have to explain who the Beatles are to anybody. So I had a song that I got published years ago by this company out of New York, and they put together catalogs of music, and then they give those catalogs at the time, those catalogs of music they would give to either artists who were looking to find songs to record, television shows who were looking for music to put in their shows, or movie studios that were looking for background music for their movies. So they've put songs in all of the above, and I thank them for it because, especially at the time when I was just starting out, that money meant more to me than anything. I mean, it was very, very helpful at the time. But they put one of my songs, got picked up for Saturday Night Live, and it was put in the background of a Beatles skit. So it was John and Paul from the Beatles sitting around at a piano, and they were talking about writing a song, coming back together after all these years to write a song. Or at least that's the illusion that the skit gave you. But in reality, they were sitting around talking about opening up a fried chicken joint. So they used my song as they're sitting at the piano and the music's playing and they're talking about writing the song. It's like my song that they're writing. But then come to find out they were just opening up a fried chicken joint. But that skit lasted like 10, 15 minutes. It was a great skit. And I was afraid because when Saturday Night Live airs, it airs for an hour and a half. But when they do the reruns, it airs for 60 minutes. So they cut a half hour out of it. But I was lucky my skit got included in that edit because that matters because I get paid for the initial airing, but then I also get paid for every time it reruns and every time it reruns in another country. So for a while, I was receiving what they call mailbox money for a long period of time. And yes, it started out with a big check, and then the next one was a little smaller and a little smaller and a little smaller. But for, say, a year's worth of time, I received enough money that I was able to eat and do what was necessary and support my habit of music. That's, people might have addictions. Mine's the music industry. I just, I like being a creative person. So, but yes, that was the background of the song that was in Saturday Night Live. And there is a link on my website where I put the video up. Sure, I'm not supposed to, but I did. It's up on my website. You can go watch the skit if you'd like.
There you go. And it will also be in the description of this video.
Awesome.
Um, as well, all of your YouTube channels and or your YouTube channel and website and Miss Tiffany's
Oh,
podcast.
she's very jealous, by the way. I told her last night that I was coming on your show today, and she says, "What are you talking about? He told me I was going to come on a show, and he's yet to call me." So she was very jealous. She said if she had the button, she would fire you.
Well, Miss Tiffany, be on the lookout. I'll be on the call.
That's awesome.
Maybe we'll get the two of you on here together, and maybe the three of us will co-host an episode with a guest of your choosing. Um, but out of everything you've done, man, with the SNL stuff and everything, the books and everything, what have been some good highlights for you?
Well, I would say one of the biggest highlights, I mentioned Bob Bullock. I don't think that my career would have gotten as high as it did without the support and ability to go work with Bob Bullock. Not only was he a great guy and he's still a great friend to this day, but I learned more in 1 week of working for Bob Bullock than I did my entire time at the university learning the subject. 1 week. And that's because he's a hard ass. He knows what he wants. You have to give him what he wants. And whether you know it or not, you got to figure it out. It is the school of hard knocks. You are spending his biggest thing to me was you're spending thousands of dollars of somebody else's money. Make it happen and make it happen fast. So I did. Again, nicest guy in the world, but he knows exactly what he wants and what the producers that we work with and what everybody wants. And you got to deliver it. So I had the opportunity to work with him for years. And then like you know, just moved on with life as time went on. But I'm still friends with him today. Like I said, I just did his website for him. He's been on the show several times. Just one of the greatest guys. So that's definitely a highlight. I used to own my own recording studio in New York. That was a highlight. It built it from the ground up. So nobody else had ever recorded in it before I set foot. So it was mine. Everything was mine. So that was awesome. And that's how I first learned about Bob Bullock. If you want to hear a quick funny story,
Right?
I had that studio in New York. I moved to New York because my grandparents were sick, and I was living in Nashville at the time. My grandparents get sick. My grandfather had to go in a nursing home. My grandmother didn't drive. She needed somebody to take care of her. So I moved to New York. I didn't want to stop working. So I bought this building, built a recording studio in it. And it was small, but it was good. It did everything I needed it to do. It was awesome. Of course, I knew nothing about what I was doing at the time or stuff, but you hire people, you get things done. So I got to work on some great records there for a lot of independent rock bands at the time, bands that were out of New York. But I was sitting in the break room with a few other people, and we're eating our lunch, and there was a Mix magazine and a Shania Twain CD sitting on the table. And I was looking through the Mix magazine, and at the back of it, I saw an advertisement for the School of Audio Engineering in Nashville. I said, huh. I said, I'm going to go teach there. And they laugh like, haha, yeah, sure you are, or whatever. I said, no, I'm going to do that. And then I'm looking at the Shania Twain CD, and on the back of it, it said the engineer was Bob Bullock. I said, I'm going to go work for Bob Bullock. And they said, yeah, okay, now you're just dreaming, because if you think of my studio at the time, it would have been like, it wasn't quite garage band studio. It was more like touring or like, local touring band level. So I was doing good projects, but not record label, not, big projects. So the fact that nobody believed me and I'm stupid, I said, okay. So the very next day, I put a lock on the studio door and I drove to Nashville. And I said, you know, I'm here. So I walked into the School of Audio Engineering, asked the girl at the front desk, who's in charge of your education program? I would like to go talk to them. She told me, yeah, it's this guy. He's down this hall, up this elevator, and over there. So I went in there, and I kid you not, out of pure coincidence, it was the guy who taught me at the school that I went to. And I walked in, he goes, oh, hey, Jay, I didn't know you were going to be around here today. What's going on? I said, I want to come here and I want to teach. He says, fantastic. Where are your credentials? I'm like, I don't have any credentials. He says, what major records have you worked on? I haven't worked on any major records. He's like, you need to have some sort of background and you need to have credentials. I said, well, what can I do to get the credentials? He said, well, you can go through our program. I'm like, thinking to myself, well, that's another year's worth of time, more schooling that I don't need to teach me the same stuff I already know. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. So he said, you're going to do that? Yep. I signed up right away and I started right away. My girlfriend at the time thought I was nuts. But she was supportive. She let me do it. And I did it. And I went through their program. And a year later, I wasn't even done with school. Wasn't even done. I was at the final stage, haven't even taken my finals or anything. And he was sitting there in the conference room one day and he didn't want to go teach this class. It was a night class. And I said, I'll do it. And he looked over at the director of the school as if he's looking for permission. And the guy just shrugged his shoulders. And that guy's name is Keith. He's my best friend to this day. He shrugged his shoulders and said, yeah, go ahead. Let him try. And they thought I was going to fall flat on my face. And they looked at me and they go, you know anything about this software, this stuff? I'm like, yeah, I know everything about it. I knew nothing about it. And I went and taught this class. And I just got in front of this class and told stories. I never thought I'd be a teacher or anything. So me in front of this group of students telling stupid stories, but it was fun and they enjoyed it. And they went back and told everybody how good I did. And I swear I don't even remember teaching what I was supposed to teach one bit, but I just made it fun and it was a good time. So I got to teach. Well, eventually that guy that I was talking to his name was Tony. He eventually retired and I worked my way up and took his place as the director of education. And one of the roles of the director of education was to help with the guest speakers that you bring into the school. Well, one day I look at my schedule and there's Bob Bullock. I was like, you got to be kidding me. So I get all the students. I said, hey, got a guest speaker coming in. He's going to work out of the studio. We need to set up the studio for him. None of the students were available to set up the studio. Now, normally that's what they do. They set it up. That's part of their schooling. So I said, all right. So I set it up. And Bob came in, he spoke, he did his thing. And then as we were leaving, I was walking him through the lobby to the door. And he said, who set up the studio? And I said, well, I did, sir. None of the students were available. I said, I hope everything was all right. Is there anything that was wrong? He goes, no, it was great. He goes, you wouldn't happen to consider coming to be my second, would you? And I said, yes, sir, I would. And from that moment on, I worked for Bob Bullock for years, for probably the rest of my time in Nashville. So that's how that all came about.
Before we finish up this interview, I want to ask you, what did having Bob Bullock have as a mentor? What was that played into your life to help you achieve your goals to what you are achieving today?
That's again, I think that's a great question because I never had a formal mentor where you sit down and you meet with people and they guide you. But there are people that I've had as informal mentors, and Bob is probably one of the biggest informal mentors I've ever had because he was working on projects that I could only dream of working on at that time. So, and I was older than the average student at that time because I was a teacher at that school. I was teaching people that were younger, when I say younger, probably by 10 years. So I got to go into the studio and I knew how important that was and how good of an opportunity that was when I went in. And I did not pass up that opportunity. Not only did I learn from, the things we worked on, but I saw the way he interacted with the clients and how he dealt with the producers and how he set up the studios and made the connections. And the people he called to make things happen, and the way he talked to those people when he would be on the phone or those type of things. It wasn't all business. It was fun, and he made sure that he related to people. And we would go out to eat, do whatever stupid things that we would do because we became friends. And I don't think that would have happened either if I was, an 18-year-old or 20-year-old out of college. I think being older allowed us to connect more, and I was much closer to his age than the average person in the studio would have been. So we were just able to connect. And matter of fact, that first book that I wrote, he wrote the back cover for me. And he told me, he goes, I've always wanted to write a book. And I told him, hey, I'll walk you through the process. And we just shared things all the time. So having him as a form of a mentor for me meant everything. Without him, I would not have worked on those projects. I worked for other engineers too who were awesome. I worked for Matt McClure, and most notable at the time was probably Lee Bryce record. And I worked for Jim Cristaldi, who was a big songwriter. We produced Maddie McCree's record together, and we produced Tristan Burke's record together. So those opportunities were fantastic. Those were the three producers I worked for. But at the time, Bob Bullock was by far the pinnacle.
Yeah. You worked on a Lee Bryce song?
Matt McClure did, and I worked for Matt McClure at the time. So by all means, it wasn't my project; it was his project. They hired Matt. Matt hired me. So I set up the studio. I was his second. I set up the studio the night before, got the microphones in place, dealt with this console and the tape machine, and Matt called all the shots. So whatever Matt needed, I just did for him, just like whatever Bob would need, I would do for him. And then there was a couple times where Matt also had when I say a very nice studio, he has a very nice studio in his home. So there was a couple times where we'd be cutting the tracks with the full band in the like say Ocean Way Studios in Nashville, one of the biggest in the world. And then Lee would want to sing vocals with his producer. So myself or with one of the other songwriters. So myself and that writer and Lee would go to Matt's house and we would record vocals while Matt was still recording the band in the studio. So I've had an opportunity to have, those type of things happen, which were fantastic. But it wouldn't have happened without Matt. Those, like I said, that was not my gig. The ones
Yeah,
that were
that's
my gig from start to finish was the stuff that I worked on with Jim Cristaldi when we produced like the Maddie McCree record. That's one where I was able to be a producer and an engineer, and Jim was able to be a producer and a musician. So together we called all the shots. We were able to. This was like the record that we were able to make, the one that we wanted. We like country music, but we like country music with an edge. So this is like a country rock album. So if you're interested in that style of music, Maddie McCree, you could probably find that on my website as well.
I have probably the best second to last ending question I can come up with, and that
Those are my
is
favorite. The second to last ones are always the best.
make sure it's Jay Franze standard. Um,
Nice.
what is the difference for you in between producing music and producing your show?
Oh, that's a good angle. Producing music to me, there's man, we sought for perfection. Not that we don't shoot for perfection with the show, but when I say perfection, like I would try out hundreds of microphones to find the one that made a vocal or an instrument sound just this much better. Probably differences nobody would ever notice. But when I worked with Bob and stuff, he knew all that information. He knew from years, like from practicing his craft since the 70s. He knew what microphones did what and how to choose them. So I had a head start. I'm like, okay, every time we do drums, Bob uses these microphones on overheads. He uses this preamp. It goes through this compressor. And okay, because I just would at the time, I just had a preamp. So I just used the preamp I had. We had access to 20 preamps. But why did we choose this one? And then when I had free time, I would just run Signal through all of them and see what the differences were. So there's a lot more things to experiment with and try and do. And you wanted perfection. You wanted the what we call signal flow. The either the vocal or the instrument goes into a microphone through a mic cable. So you got to get the right microphone. You got to get the right mic cable. You got to get the right preamp. You got to get the right compressor, EQ, channel strip, whatever you got. Everything you wanted to be the best because you didn't want anything to be the point of failure. Because as soon as you put a weak item in, the signal is going to be that weak for the rest of its path. So music was much more technical. It took much more time. And we knew it was going to live on and people were going to listen to it over and over and over again. So we wanted to make every piece of it as good as possible. Where the show, you buy a nice microphone, you buy a nice console, you get the nice preamps, you get all of this stuff. You set it all up one time and you tweak it till it's just perfect. And then you leave it that way forever because it's the same person talking in the same microphone over and over and over and over again. And it's not a different musician or a different day where you're singing this way one day or this way another day. And then I edit the shows painstakingly, probably much more than anybody would ever notice or care. But I want it to be perfect. But the problem with it is you'll only listen to it one time. You'll listen to that episode one time. Where a record, you might listen to it over and over and over again. So putting a lot of effort into a podcast or a radio show or a talk show, knowing that most people are only going to listen to it one time and they're not going to notice that little nuance of a tweak you made at this point in the show. It'll just blow right by them.
Yeah. People don't pick up on little things like us hosts do, like even when I'm editing my shows now these days, because I have not in the past. I'm a man, I can admit to that. I'm lazy at some points. But then there are just some conversations that you don't want to edit because you don't want to edit the flow of the conversation. And Jay, you've been a great guest. Thank you so much for coming on the show and your support. It means the world, and you're one of the best. So keep plowing through for the next wave of podcasters, man.
Well, I appreciate that, sir. Thank you. And it's always a pleasure being here. Anytime you need it, I'm here to help.
I still got one last question for you before we get into our last segment. Can you around for one more segment?
Whatever you need, buddy. I'm here all day. It's either this or go up and talk to my wife. Who wants to do that? I just kid, wife. I'm sorry. If you're listening, just know that was a joke.
All joking because I'm laughing. So it's a joke. What advice would you give somebody who's too afraid to record a podcast?
Just do it. Don't be afraid. Just do it. Don't take the time to think about it. Yes, there's a lot to think about. And if you think about it that much, it will be overwhelming and you will never do any of it. But if you just start and then the next time you do it in another recording, just make it 1% better. And then the next time, just a little bit better then. And each time you do it, just make it just an increment better, an increment better. And then eventually you're going to have a show that you're going to be proud of. If I go back and listen to the first few episodes I did, even with experience, I would no, they were horrible, horrible. And I used to, at the school, when we'd have all those guest speakers come in, they would work in the studio and they would give a demonstration of how they do things. Then they go up into a hall where they would talk to the students, and then they do a Q&A. I would be the person sitting there on the stage asking the questions of that person and then letting them answer Q&A. And matter of fact, when podcasting first started, they would take those sessions we did and they'd release them as a podcast. But I wasn't the one doing the stuff. I was just the one up on stage talking to the guests. Even with that experience, when I put this show together, my first several episodes were horrible. Horrible because we didn't know. So we were just trying things, or like the very first time you put a show together. Okay, how do I get this on the internet for people to listen to it? You need a hosting company. Okay, well, I need a hosting company. Now you got to figure that out. So there's all of these things you got to figure out. And once you start figuring them out, you're like, ooh, if I had only known that sooner, because if I knew that, I would have done this a different way. And then you're like, oh, okay, now do I go back and fix it or do I let it go? If I go back and fix it, I'm going to have to do that for the first 30 episodes. Do I want to do that? I don't know. And then you start having all these conversations with yourself. So you can either start from the beginning and just gradually get better, or you can constantly search for perfection and then release. But it'll never be perfect. Never. So just start. Just start. Week along the way. You'll get better. No one's going to listen to it for your first, 40 episodes anyway. So just do it. Everybody thinks, well, if I do it, people are going to make fun of me. My friends will laugh at me. No, they won't. You know why? Because they're not going to listen. They might make fun of you because you did it, but they're not going to listen to it.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
just do it. Don't tell
Mm.
people you're doing it. Just do it.
Yeah. Your old friends won't listen, but that's why you make new friends in the podcast community who end up being co-hosts.
Well, you can't blame your friends too. I mean, if you like, I used to play hockey as a kid. And when I talk to my friends that I played hockey with, we talk about hockey. If all of a sudden I said, hey, I've got this podcast, come, go check it out. We talk about country music. They'd be like, I don't listen to country music. What the hell do I want to listen to this crap for? Okay. You're not my audience. So they might be happy for me, but they're not my audience.
Yeah.
There might be an occasional story they want to hear, but that's it.
Man, I've had such an incredible time recording this episode, and it's not just because you're a real good friend of mine, but because honestly, man, I I have so much respect for you and your show and what you have brought to the internet. Thank you for giving a place for real independent artists to shine, man. I love your show and what you do over there.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Man, we got one more segment.
Uh-oh.
I th- but before we get to that, do you have anything for me?
Oh, sir, I could ask you questions all day. I mean, how much time are you going to give me?
5.
5? All right. Let's start with something that is just the basic. We talk about the drive and desire you have to do a show, and we talk about the drive and desire you have to be a musician. What is it that gives you the drive and desire to continue doing your show? Because it is, like I said, it's a thankless job at the beginning. So why do you continue to do what you do?
The people. If there's no people that give you feedback like yourself and the audience that watches the show, you don't have a show. That's the same thing with musicians. There is no show without that audience. And it's that drive to know. You said it before we rolled. Be a little behind the scenes. You said, you know, dig deep, but not too deep. I'm saying very often I get to do a deep dive like this on the show. But, it's just trying to find that drive of people, but also not pushing too far to leading them to want more.
Do you feel like doing the show has become part of your identity?
Man, yeah. I mean, when honest to God, have a tattoo on my arm and it says KGC. And while that is kind of egotistical, somebody might say,
It's just
there,
because you don't remember your initials. That's all. I get it.
that too. But all seriousness, there's a meaning behind that. Uh, it starts from all of the people that I have that support me, like you, Jeff, Golden, everybody, Kate, everybody.
I
Whether it
just
be
want to
my
point out you said Golden, like everybody just knows. That's William Lee Golden,
William Lingo,
founding member and lead
and
singer of the Oak Ridge Boys.
yes,
Just throwing that out there.
been there
He's
for
that close to him.
61 years.
He's just
Been there.
that close to him that he calls him Golden.
Golden. I said it so fast I said gold, but I said golden. But, having great mentors like that also supports you, I mean, Jeff Panzer supporting you, that's pretty up there. I mean, he's 3,000 music videos deep, and he takes the time to invest in you. I mean, if that's not a reason to keep going, I don't know what is. And the guests.
Do you think if Jeff did not come along and you were still doing the show the way you originally set out to do it, that it would have lasted?
No, because what Jeff then did was he enabled a work ethic in me that I did not know I had. And while it it's sometimes very difficult getting to talk to guests like you and getting the advice I've gotten from Jeff, which is, don't live in the past. You can't change the past. The past is the past for a reason. You got to impact the future. And, just kind of thinking about that and thinking about how I want my life to be remembered by. Yeah, I don't think there would be a KGC show without Jeff Panzer.
Very nice. Well, sorry, sir. Sorry for hijacking your show once again. Please take it back.
Well, that's how podcast brothers come together. And I want to thank you for taking over for just a quick minute. And I hope somebody that is listening to this show takes something away. Before we get to the rapid fire, I normally don't do this, and this will be the part that yeah. Don't give up. You're looking at two guys, one that's trying to make it right here, and one that has made it in many aspects, more ways than one. Or as an author, as an executive producer, as a host, as many things. And I'm just a host, soon to be author,
Oh,
later to
you're soon
come.
to be an award-winning host.
There it is. Hopefully, Lord
I'm
willing.
just saying, it's not on my resume. That's on yours, buddy.
But I do want to say thank you guys for a platform, a good enough platform to get some good merch out there. Y'all, we're getting some merch out there. Um, don't know what that has to do with anything. Let's go. Let's go into our rapid fire Q&A, buddy.
All right.
Uh, I know you already talked about him in the show, but who has been the most professional mentor in your life?
If I was going to pick one, I'd probably have to say Bob Bullock.
What is your favorite childhood memory?
Hmm. I was, like I mentioned, I was a hockey player, and my parents would go out of their way to take me to practice and games. I lived in Boston. I got to play in the Olympic Arena in New York, Lake Placid. So, I mean, my parents would drive me there. That would be 4 hours away from our house, 4+ hours. And they would drive me there for games. I mean, they were willing to do whatever it took. And I may not have realized what that took out of them at that time. Now that I'm a parent, I know exactly what it takes out of them. But those were the moments I look back with my family. I remember those. Those matter.
What's what's the best compliment you've ever been received?
You just said I was a great podcast host. That's awesome. Um, I whenever anybody could like honestly tells me I helped them with something, that's more than I could have ever asked for because I don't I don't know. I don't feel like I'm doing anything spectacular to help anybody, but if somebody says something I've done is either help them, if it's somebody I've had on the show that shared a story that's helped somebody, that's happened a few times. When I was a teacher, like I'll get people who connect with me on Facebook now that I don't remember who they are, but they'll say, "Oh, I was one of your students in this class. You were my favorite teacher, and this is what I got out of it." Those are moments like, "Wow, I didn't even know that existed," but that's awesome.
And I know the type of person you are, so I know that this is the best way to end the show. But if you could be remembered by one thing, what would it be?
Um, I feel like I would like people to think of me as somebody that had the passion and the drive and the desire to make things happen. Doesn't matter what it is, but make things happen. And most importantly to me, that's the way I want my kids to think of me. I have three daughters, a 15-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 3-year-old, Sarabella, Valentina, and Luciana. Those are my three daughters, and I really want them to remember me as somebody who was there for them, somebody that showed them how to make it, somebody that was supportive in anything they wanted to do. My daughter Luciana, she's the 11-year-old. She is a dancer. She's been dancing for years and she has the same passion for dance as I have for music. That's all she thinks about. She practices all day, every day. She's always working on something. She's in studios. She's got dance class every day of the week. She was at 9 years old, got picked up to perform in the Nutcracker with the Cincinnati Ballet. She's just that passionate about it, and I will support that for her any day of the week. Bella, my oldest daughter, the 15-year-old, she has a passion for dance and loves to dance, but she teaches at the dance school, so her passion lies more with the teaching. And she also speaks fluent sign language, which I don't know why or how that came about, but she does. And she has a desire to work teaching with special needs students and doing sign language interpretation for people. So I'll support the hell out of her for that. And she's got her own business. She's 15 years old and she's got a face painting business. And she makes more money doing that than most people I know do in the music industry. So I mean, I don't get it. She's just nobody ever taught her. I'm hoping that she sees my drive and passion that influences her, but she does it all on her own. And my 3-year-old, she just drives me nuts. She's 3.
Yeah.
She's a tornado at all times.
Can't get much better than a 3-year-old.
I'm hoping 4 and 5 calms her down a little bit, but right now she's a tornado.
You're praying for that peaceful stuff.
Oh, I'm old. They say having kids is going to keep you young. Let's hope so, because I'm going to need that stamina.
Well, we've had such a great show, everybody. Thank you, Jay, again for coming on to the show. Make sure you guys check out the Jay Franze Show Monday for some of the best interviews, and on Wednesday, where he is joined both Monday and Wednesday by his lovely co-host, Miss Tiffany Mason. But she takes the lead on the news and reviews of the portion of the show. Um, so I really want to get a Jay Franze quote. So we have reached the top of the hour, which means,
We have reached the end of the show.
yeah, that's how you know I'm a true friend, y'all. Oh man, we got to get got to get you some signed books out for some people of the KGC show, and maybe do a little contest with one of your books.
Sweet.
Let's do it, and hope to come on the show soon, man.
Absolutely. Open invitation.
Well, maybe what we'll do is we'll help promote this show like on Monday or Wednesday or whatever. But whatever works for you, you call me and you let me know. With that being said, that's gonna be an easy edit. Uh, thank you guys for watching the KGC show, and um, honestly, thank you guys for the nominations. Thank you for your votes. Every vote matters, but what's more important is that we all come together and remember that when the whole world is going crazy, music calms us all together, and it's a great, great, great honor to host this podcast. With that being said, thank you so much for watching this episode of the KGC show. And we'll see you with who we can get next time. Whoever I can fit under this big hat of mine. Thank you. And we'll see you later. Jay Franze, everybody.
Bye now.